So this is it, Panasonic's Magnum Opus GH6. It's probably the best camera they've ever made, and that's including S1H, Varicam and even EVA 1. This camera is packed. It does 6K, 4K, 3K, 2K, all kinds of Ks. It does 24 up to 300 frames per second, depending on the resolution. It does all kinds of aspect ratios, 16:9, 17:9, 4:3, full sensor, pixel to pixel cropping ratio. It can record in H.264, 265, ProRes internally. It does 10-bit, 8-bit, 422, 420, long op, all-eye. It does everything, and the list of recording options is vast. Sensor is micro four thirds, 25 megapixels. It has a crop factor of 2 times, but this time they've used some occult magic and they've squeezed every last bit of dynamic range possible from this small sensor size. This improvement comes in a form of a feature called Dynamic Range Boost. It records the video with 2 different ISO values and combines it into a single image, which effectively gives us almost 2 whole stops of dynamic range. DR boost off, DR boost on. DR boost off, DR boost on, you bitch. Build quality is absolutely stellar. Buttons are clicky, knobs are stiff and tight, grip is spacious and comfortable. Number of buttons is insane, and most of them are customizable. This helps a lot, and you can truly make this camera your own. For example, I set C1 to 4K 1 FPS video timelapse, C2 is my 4K 120 pixel to pixel crop-in mode for shooting wildlife, and C3 is 300 frames per second full HD super slow-mo mode. When it comes to UI and monitoring, they've thought of everything. There are histograms, vector scopes, waveforms, zebras, peaking. Screen is bright and it holds up even during sunny days. And if that's not enough for you, there's even also an awesome EVF, which is a joy to use. Image stabilization is hands down the best on the market. There's IBIS, electronic image stabilization, and on top of that, lens image stabilization if your lens supports it. And they can all work in tandem. For example, this is 450mm equivalent handheld with only IBIS turned on.
Ferocious.
Great thing about IBIS is that you can specify your lens focal length when using a lens without any contacts, vintage lenses for example. And here you can see I've made a bunch of presets for my manual lenses, so I can easily swap them on the fly. I didn't use GH6 for photography all that much, but 25 megapixels is more than enough for any size prints. Autofocus is quite decent considering that it's contrast based, but I still haven't properly tested it as I don't own any native micro four thirds lenses yet. I'm recording this video with the Sony FX3, which is a full frame camera. And of course it outperforms this camera when it comes to dynamic range and low light, but the gap is smaller than you might expect. For example, this camera has almost 12 stops of dynamic range and Sony has 12.7 stops, which is not that bad. But when it comes to low light, Sony simply destroys the Panasonic, and that's something that just needs to be accepted. But it's not all that bad. Smaller sensor does have its benefits. Considering the 2 times crop factor, it's great for shooting wildlife, and IBIS, in-body image stabilization, is great precisely because of the smaller sensor. Now, before the B-roll starts, I want to talk about the full-frame hysteria and gear porn in general. While I do agree that full-frame cameras are technically superior, crop cameras are not that far behind, and having the best camera doesn't really serve any purpose if you don't have a good story to back it up. So my advice is always buy the camera that you can afford, focus on your ideas, practice, try all kinds of lenses, and you'll be good. You'll be good, my guy.